Unfortunately, the other night, Nikola Jokic went down with what was a pretty serious knee injury at the time, resulting in the entire sport, and especially Denver, holding their breath. Now, the injury, which was a hyperextension, is still undeniably severe, but much better than it could have been, as it will only hold him out about a month. That month, however, will encompass about 16 to 18 games, which will place Jokic, who hasn't missed a game all season, dangerously close to the 65-game minimum. I know I'm about one of 7 people that were annoyed by this, but knowing that a guy who is averaging this has a chance at not even making the All-NBA team put a sour taste in my mouth. The NBA put the 65-game minimum into place after the 2022-23 season concluded, and its main aim was to stop stars from constantly load managing and missing games. And hey, that is an absolutely great goal. When you spend a lot of money to go and watch your favorite player play, only for him to be ruled out right before tip-off because he got a sudden left toe cramp that takes him out, it gets a little annoying. Sure, you might get lucky and see Bobby Portis absolutely torch the Suns and Wizards, but let's be real, we're here for Giannis. And no, that reason isn't why he missed those games, but everything else said was true. Speaking of Giannis, he's also on verge of missing out on All-NBA this year. Why? Oh, because he suffered separate groin and calf strains that both happened in the middle of games. Wemby also suffered a calf strain that puts him in serious jeopardy of missing out on awards and delaying his arrival as King Defensive Player of the Year. We aren't even halfway through the season, and 3 of the top players in the league have already been seriously hampered. And it's not to forget that LeBron, Steph, Luka, and Ant have all also missed quite a bit of time already. It really looks like it might just be a 2-horse race for MVP between Luka and Shea, and if Luka were to unfortunately get hurt, then Shea would essentially just walk into the MVP award. I think by my tone you can tell I don't like the rule and think it is a lazy and reckless change. Here's a thought scenario for you. Imagine there is this pretty good NBA player. Definitely all NBA caliber, and he's on the verge of getting a contract extension. Uh-oh. Our new imaginary friend sustains some sort of moderate injury. Let's say in this case it's calf strain. Uh-oh. That 65-game limit is getting pretty close. You don't want to miss out on those tens of millions of dollars. Better get back to action. Might not be fully ready, but when was rushing back from a calf strain ever hurt anyone? And his Achilles is torn. And the season is lost, and you don't get that money you were playing for. Why does an NBA player need more money? They're already a millionaire. You know, that's a pretty valid question, and my very valid response to that back is, have you ever seen a professional athlete? Thankfully, this hasn't happened yet. Well, it could have had something to do with Joel Embiid losing his best season of his career in 2024, but hey, that was a knee, not an Achilles, so we're doing just fine. I was curious, so I looked back at all of NBA history, and by all I mean since the 82-game season became a thing, and found out how many players would miss out on an award if this rule had always been around. 1955 seasons had everyone make it to All-NBA and All-Defensive Team, 11 of which were prior to 1990, so good job to those guys at not getting hurt. For the other 36 seasons, 76 awards would have been revoked, with 47 of those coming since 2000. In fact, there have just been 5 times this century where no players would have missed, the most recent being in 2010. Though, keep in mind, 1999, 2012, 2020, and 2021 were all shortened season. I was surprised to find that there have been 8 All-NBA or All-Defensive Team selections handed out to players that have played less than 50 games. Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Yao Ming, Joakim Noah, and Draymond Green all fit this list, and the least games played to ever receive an award in NBA history was Andrei Kirilenko in 2005, who played 41 games, just half the season, before being awarded an All-Defensive second-team selection. Only 6 players would have lost an All-NBA first-team selection, being Pete Maravich, Bill Walton, Bernard King, Shaquille O'Neal twice, Chris Paul, and Giannis. As for the single awards, John Morant is no longer most improved. Ricky Pierce and Bobby Jackson lose their 6th Man of the Year awards. 2 Rookie of the Year winners are changing hands in Patrick Ewing and Brandon Roy. The list of guys losing 1 DPOY is Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert, and Jaren Jackson Jr., and 1 MVP, Bill Walton, goes to someone else. There were a few other surprising things to me. First, I forgot how human LeBron became when he got to LA, missing 3 All-NBA selections. I knew Shaq had some injury woes in his career, but he loses 4 total All-NBA selections in this scenario, the most of any player. I also didn't realize how much time Dennis Rodman missed, meaning he's losing 3 All-Defensive Team nods as well. Lastly, I noticed a trend of players playing less and less games around the 2000s, which I regrettably didn't chart, where more and more players rode that imaginary 65-game threshold. After COVID, something happened as 7 of the 25 awards would have swapped hands in 2022, by far the most of any year. So, what are the takeaways here? Firstly, players missing time is not a new thing. Shocking, I know. Yes, it has grown in regularity, but the best players have consistently gotten injured in league history, especially in the last 25 to 30 years. And honestly, this also restores a lot of faith in the voters. Sure, there was an oddball selection here or there. I know Andrei Kirilenko was an absolute dog on the defensive end, but there is no reason he should have gotten the nod when he missed half the season. But all in all, only 0.6% of these awards were given to guys who played less than 50 games, which shows that games played obviously matters to voters. I imagine a lot of those seasons, the voters also saw players sustain serious injuries and gave them some slack. Sure, they might have played 58 games, but hey man, you were one of the 15 best players in the league during those 58 games, so here's your award. And actually, how can we forget that the NBA also made all NBA teams positionless in that same batch of rule changes? Something I wholeheartedly agree with. That promotes playing the game more, because now there is one, not 3 competitions for all NBAs. Previously, there were twice as many spots for guards and forwards than there were centers, and obviously that isn't a great system if the league is oversaturated with center talent, like the 1990s where there were so many Hall of Fame centers running around and there just wasn't enough all NBA spots for all of them. And here's another tough pill to swallow about the modern NBA. It is far harder on the body than anyone ever gives it credit for. Sometimes I see somebody want to give Wilt Chamberlain his flowers. Back in his day, he ran up the court 48 minutes a night. And guess what? That should be welcomed as a reasonable thing to do. You know, appreciating the sport we claim to love. But then they have to throw in some garbage about how modern players are too soft. Now look, they might have a slight point in some regard, but the game is incredibly spaced out today. Players today have to constantly fight over screens, make rapid, sudden closeouts, and quickly find the next guy before the ball does. It is incredibly stressful on the body, especially tendons and ligaments. Not to mention the fact that by the time these players get to the league, they have thousands of hours already racked up on their body because they've been constantly playing basketball since they were 9 years old. Make no mistake, there are some amazing Ironmen that avoid injuries remarkably well, but those guys don't fall from trees and they never have. The game has evolved and the bodies haven't caught up. Players from older generations may have had to deal with guys clotheslining each other or throwing jumping elbows, but they simply didn't have to deal with the wear and tear that modern players do, and that is simply a fact. So, after all this discussion, I think the NBA should remove the 65-game limit. Place more faith in your voters to get it right. After all, MVP races are fun. Sure, it leads to endless nonsensical arguments about how this guy's team is full of literal trash cans and his opponent is a carried bum. Maybe even we sprinkle in a little bit of media racism too. But hey, that's one of the more fun things about the NBA season. The nonsensical arguments, not the racism. That's bad. That's very bad. After all, seeing this man and this man and this man not being able to be in the MVP race just because they might play 64 instead of 65 games is a massive disappointment. And don't even get me started on them not making All-NBA.
What about load management? It's literally the worst thing to ever happen to sports.
First off, man, calm down. Karl Malone had a career. Secondly, load management really isn't as bad as people make it out to be, and I think more blame needs to be placed on owners and coaching staff than the actual players themselves. Sure, there are some outliers that I think absolutely abuse it, but even though I'm upset that I wasn't able to watch Giannis play those 2 times, he really doesn't load manage all that often. And I think load management is something that some organizations use better than others. And are we really going to penalize those organizations for competence when there's other organizations that are simply incompetent? I mean, after all, when the Clippers are setting Kawhi Leonard, they put themselves in a worse shot at winning. Yeah, they might make the playoffs and he might be healthy, but either way, their playoff run is automatically going to be harder because of those 30 games he sat out during the season. And I totally empathize with fans suffering because guess what? They do. It's something that has affected me twice, and it really is annoying. And honestly, saying that, I think this is one of those things where there isn't a proper solution. I think the 65-game minimum is the worst of 2 evils, mostly because it risks players getting hurt for money or personal glory, and everybody knows the NBA isn't shortening the season to 70 games. Kind of an anticlimactic way to end this video, but I think the NBA just needs to come up with a new and better solution. That will result in everybody yelling at them. Because no perfect solution exists. We can only improve from errors to make a better future.